Okay, so I'm going to start by asking, how old is your son?
Lucas is 9.5.
9.5. And how long has your family's been working with Jennifer for 5 years now? And do you remember what first drew you to working with her?
Well, yes. There was a volunteer fair that's held every summer in Woodstock, and it's held outside. So we were just kind of wandering around. So Lucas was about 4 at the time. Yeah, shortly to be turning 5. And it would have been in the summer. And he was just sort of running all over the place and not really focusing on anything and didn't seem to be having that great a time. It was hectic. There was a lot of stuff going on. And all of a sudden I saw this little tent, just like a little teeny, kind of like a one-person tent that was set up with a little sign outside, free mini yoga sessions. So I said to Lucas, wow, here's a free thing. Why don't we see how it is? Not really expecting anything from it more than maybe he'll be still for a few minutes. And here we are all these years later. Um, she worked with him, and almost immediately I saw him relax in a way that I just never saw him relax. It honestly brought tears to my eyes because at that point he hadn't been diagnosed with anything more than a sensory processing disorder. All I knew was that he was so, he just wasn't at peace. You know what I mean? He was like very hyperactive. He was very disorganized. It's not that he wasn't happy. There were plenty of times that he was happy, but he just wasn't peaceful. He wasn't really calm. And he would sometimes get so revved up that I would say to my husband, it's like watching something short circuit. I mean, it was heartbreaking. Um, so I was just like, wow, we have to work with you. And this was just from her doing a few basic introductory yoga poses, but combining it with, he was very young at the time, so I think she was using puppets and music and, making it appropriate for a child that wasn't even 5 yet. At that time, she was living very close. It was like a 5-minute drive from here. And we started going there once a week and sometimes twice a week. In fact, when school breaks in summers, we've often seen her twice a week. And I've often said that this might, go more with a future question, but if I could have her live with us and then he could get this every day, I mean, it would just be a godsend. It's been really great.
What about the work that Jennifer does with Lucas do you think is really beneficial to him?
Well, it's not just yoga, even though yoga in and of itself, I do yoga myself. I had done it a long time ago and recently got back into it myself, so I'm being reminded about a lot of the things yoga can do. But it's not just the yoga. Or I should say that yoga encompasses so much more than just poses because there's a meditative aspect to it and there's a centering aspect to it. The breathing alone, but she also does the sound healing. And, she's constantly bringing new things into the practice. As he grows, she grows with what he needs. She senses what he needs. First of all, she knows him so well by now. But they just have a beautiful relationship. He tells her he's always known her. He's a very spiritual child, so he will talk about past lives. He says, he talks about, he's an only child, and he'll talk about my husband and I and him and our cat, Rachel, and her. That's who else he's bringing into the family and saying she's the other person that's in our family. So that's how, much he connects with her and how much she means to all of us.
Take a second because we can edit it out. That's awesome. I like we can edit it out. That's okay. Really amazing.
Yeah, it is because he does have. We don't have any family right here, but we have family in New York City, Connecticut, Michigan. They're not on the other ends of the earth, and he has close relationships with them too, and he has friends here. But this is like his person, And I don't know what we'll ever do if she moves away. I don't want to think about it.
Yeah. It's a really great service. And it's more than a service at that point. It's another relationship, like someone to feel comfortable with, which is like a lot of the time what these kids need. Or what anyone needs, not just these children. It's a very special aspect to the whole experience.
Exactly it. And he senses that she loves him so completely as he is because of who he is, and it just kind of makes I think it just encourages his higher self
Mm-hmm.
to come out, you know,
Yeah.
which has always been there. But it kind of helps all that static drop away, and he has a lot of static, you know. So he was eventually diagnosed on the autism spectrum and subsequently with a mood disorder. He's not in public school anymore. He goes to the Center for Spectrum Services in Kingston, which we just started this school year, which has been wonderful for him. I mean, it's really the right place for him to be, and he's definitely happier being there. But even so, even being in that environment where he's also very accepted for who he is, there's a lot that's hard for him. So I think that when he comes home, it's, you know, it's his refuge and being with her, you know, definitely. And we occasionally do yoga together. In fact, he's really sweet. He'll give me every once in a while when he senses that I'm tense. He goes, "You need a relaxation, mommy." And he puts me, you know, lay down on the mat. He puts the crystals on me. He does a little massage. A couple of times he's done the. One time she left the bowls. He did the sound healing. But other times we have a tuning fork. We use the tuning fork and vibrations. And but most of the time, if I say, "Do you want to do, you know, a session?" Most of the time he just wants to, you know, wait for her. But he will go to his room now and just sit quietly. And sometimes he'll put, like, I have relaxation apps on the iPhone, iPad, and sometimes he'll just go up there and do a relaxation. So he's so in tune to this, and I'm grateful because a lot of kids, I know other parents, I know a lot of parents in the special needs community, and sometimes their kids just aren't receptive to it, you know, which is a shame, or they don't think they'd be receptive to it. I have a feeling if she worked with them, they would be. But they're like, no, they're not going to sit for that. Or, oh, I tried, you know, doing something like that and it didn't work out, you know. Mm-hmm. But I didn't try with her.
Well, that's the next question. Who would you recommend this work to?
Well, I mean, I think in the day and age we live in, anybody, you know, I don't think you have to be diagnosed with something. I think that we're all living under tremendous amounts of stress in this world. And I think it's such a healthy way to do that instead of, you know, self-medicating with, you know, what most of us do. You know, I'm going to have a drink, I'm going to eat this thing. You know, this is just so much of a healthier way to do it, to be able to cope. But also especially for anyone that has any kind of a sensory issue who especially needs to find balance. I would definitely recommend it for any age. And just because I've seen how much she's helped my child, I think, you know, I had a couple of sessions with her going way back a few years ago, and I would have, you know, kept it up if I could have. But so I know she's wonderful with adults too, but she does seem to have a really special way with children. And I know so much of her dream is to be able to bring this into the schools and give the children what they so need, you know, as compared to these sit down and do another worksheet, you know. It's just crazy how much worksheets there are. You know, it's just like any kind of imagination, creativity. It's just, not that there was a lot to begin with, but even that's gone now. The schools are, it's not good. I mean, at least where he is, it's more flexible, but overall the public schools are pretty bad.
For the sensory disorders, this is something I was just wondering.
Sure.
How do you think that the work that she does, like, works to help him with that specifically? Do you think it's the relaxation part of it, or do you think that the tuning forks or something like that actually helps, which I was curious about because I didn't think that would be something that would actually relax that.
You know, I've read extensively, because that was the first thing that he was diagnosed with. I read extensively about sensory processing disorder, SPD for short. And then, of course, I've read extensively about these other diagnoses since then. But it really helps with all of these diagnoses. There are different, I don't know if I'm going to explain this right, but there's different systems, I guess, in the body that are affected when you have a sensory processing disorder. And with some children, it might be mostly vestibular. You know, their sense of balance is off. With Lucas, a lot of it is proprioceptive. He is so up in the stratosphere, you know, and so much like this that he kind of needs to be brought down to earth. And these different movements that she does with him ground him. He needs to be grounded. It's almost like when you think of yoga, so many positions, you know, it's like planting your feet, you're grounding yourself. You know, you might be lifting up at the same time or doing something else, but he needs to be grounded. So can I really explain the medical, scientific stuff perfectly? No, but there is real data to show that if you do this now, it's heavy works, deep pressure. So, you know, there could be just as simple as, I mean, I do this with him a lot too to help him kind of know where his body is in space, you know, and just kind of help ground him. The sound healing, I'm sure, just in my experience with it, it really kind of hits a deep place in you. Those vibrations are just, even without the tuning fork on you, when you're hearing the sounds and it vibrates, there's something primal in that, you know. So I think that also whenever you read about sensory processing or autism, the parts of the brain that are really deeply affected are that real kind of primitive, or right, not the most primitive, but right above the brainstem, amygdala, I think it's called, and that has to do with the whole fight or flight response. So their systems are almost the way, if you think back to, you know, when we lived in caves, you know, everything is just, there's always an enemy nearby. You're always on guard. Whether it's from their own responses, because their own responses can, when they get upset, you know, freak them out sometimes, or they're perceiving a threat where there really isn't a threat, but to them it's a threat. And the response to that is either to run out of a room or to fight. So he is living in that state a great deal of the time. And I think what all of this does is it just calms down that state. You know, there's actual things in the brain that are not in balance. If you think about serotonin, if you think about dopamine, you know, there's too little of this, there's too much of that, you know, and it balances them out in a way that medication also does. But how lovely to be able to get this without having to take medication, you know, or more medication. He does take some medication. It got to the point where he unfortunately had to, and he was asking for it. So, and it has been very helpful. But I'm sure if he wasn't having yoga and didn't know these techniques of calming himself down, you know, he's on a very small amount, that he would need more than he is taking, you know.
The next two that I have might be a little redundant now, but
okay.
we might as well just ask anyway, just in case. How would you describe the work that Jennifer does?
I would say that she's a healer. Primarily, I would call her a healer. I think that when she meets somebody, she really just kind of takes in, of course, from talking to the parent, but also just really from being with the child, and really senses what they need. I don't think she needs to be told a lot of things verbally. She senses it, and she gives them what they need. So, you know, with Lucas, he really has always greatly enjoyed the relaxation, the shavasana, the, you know, laying down, and all the things that she does to soothe him. So for another child, it might be more that their system needs to be woken up. I mean, that's another way that sensory processing can be. And the same person can have different areas, you know, like in one part of the day, they're very hyped up and they need activities to calm down. Which could be yoga, meditation, just curling up, you know, in a quiet place with classical music. Other times they could be very, like the other end of it, like they're just not motivated, they're very sluggish. That's what, you know, the trampoline is for, or swinging on the swing. So sometimes the system has to be woken up in order for the child to be able to concentrate on getting their work done, or, you know, whatever it is. But I would primarily say that she heals.
This one's definitely going to be redundant.
Okay.
Because I think that you've made this very clear. Why do you continue working with Jennifer?
Yeah. Well, I told her, don't just let me talk. You know, as I said, it's been a gift. You know, Lucas, I feel like I didn't say this enough, that maybe I spoke too much about areas of need for him. He is a beautiful child. He has such a loving heart, and he is so creative, and he's just full of joy. Like, his natural state is joy. He's been that way since he was a baby. And you know, as he's gotten older, a lot of the stuff has weighed him down. You know, we kind of saw him losing the sparkle in his eye a little bit, which is like the last thing as a parent that you ever want. You know, you'd move earth to get that back. So I don't want to really be crying on the video, but I think that she helped bring that back to him.